Well, it's the dog days of training camp, but Eddie Paskal here and my guy Jesse Merrick are not feeling the dog days yet. Well, we might be just a little bit. And we appreciate you guys hanging out with us on another episode, I should say, of the Raiders Training Camp podcast presented by SiriusXM. And Jade, that's a new one for me. I was going to say Jesse today, but we'll go with Jade. Anyways, Raiders back on the field, Jesse.
Yeah.
On the field yesterday as well, coming off of an off day. We're back on the field tomorrow. And we're kind of in that point now where we're in that funky part of the calendar where it just does feel very kind of the same and repetitive, and we're in a routine. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just kind of the reality of where we are on the calendar, right?
Wash, rinse, and repeat, kind of same deal. I think for the players, it's probably about that too. They're looking ahead to having the Niners out here next week, so that's probably something they're looking forward to. And so I think this is the time where you really kind of hone in on your details, your technique, all that stuff. You're getting a little more comfortable with some of the new guys there, and they're getting more reps, so that's a big win for a lot of them. But definitely, this is that time where like the guys that are very routine-oriented kind of start to shine.
Yes, 100%. And we will get to the guys that have shined, whatever it is, in just a second. But we're feeling good about today's episode of the show. We are kind of hitting our groove for camp as well. In a little bit, we're going to welcome in our guy, Amik Robertson. Big Meek. They told us pound for pound, toughest guy on the team. And we're going to talk to him about a variety of things. But it was great to catch up with him. And got his hands on a football today. So very nice at number 21. But let's start here. We'll shift to the offensive side of the football for a sec, Jesse. And you and I have talked a lot leading into this about what we wanted to see from this offensive line.
Yeah.
And certainly not as many questions from the big fellas up front as there were 12 months ago.
Yeah.
But all the same, you and I have seen a little bit of rotation, a little mixing, a little bit of let's call it intrigue on the right side.
Yeah, the right side of that offensive line has looked a little bit different the last couple of days, right? Specifically at right tackle, you go out there and you see big old Thayer Munford. He's got that massive frame, the one that this coaching staff, in the previous regimes they've worked for, kind of valued that height, weight type of thing at that position. And he's kind of filled into himself. He obviously comes in a lot more comfortable, so I liked what I've seen from him. But then also Greg Van Roten as well out there, getting a lot of reps at guard today alongside Thayer. And those guys got some good work today, too.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's important to remind ourselves, too, right? And we heard this from Thayer yesterday saying, hey, look, it is a competition. We're trying to do our best. Jermaine Illumina are certainly not going anywhere.
No, definitely
right?
not.
I mean, certainly been in the mix as well, doing his thing on the right side of the offensive line. But it has definitely felt like, and correct me if I'm wrong, a noted increase in reps at right tackle for Thayer?
Yeah, definitely has. I mean, he's been getting more burn, that's for sure. And I think that's something you do. Just yesterday, he was talking to all of us, the media folk as well, and saying how much more comfortable he feels just kind of like in his process. And you hear that a lot from the guys that are entering year two in terms of figuring out how to be a pro, being more comfortable in this system, all that stuff. Even life away from football, just like figuring out how to be a professional athlete. Like that's probably a tough thing to balance as a young man kind of growing up too.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remind ourselves, too, as we're now, we just wrapped up practice number 9.
Yeah.
Just over a week now from the start of the preseason. But we have to keep reminding ourselves, too, like, there's certainly a method to the madness, right? So, head coach Josh McDaniels, Mick Lombardi, the staff knows what the goal is, what the plan is for right tackle, but really for every position going into a practice. So it could just be like, hey, let's give Thayer a few days running with the big dogs and switch Jermaine. Like, there's so much going into the personnel side of this that you and I just simply aren't privy to, that we do kind of have to wait, pump the brakes a little bit, and really wait until joint practice in the preseason to really kind of see where this whole thing shakes out.
Yeah, because this is the time to do that, to mix it up. I mean, we saw it last year as well. Granted, I know they were trying to figure out who their best quote-unquote 5 were, out there, so they mixed up the personnel groups a ton last year. We haven't seen as much of that, but now this is that time where I think, hey, okay, if that competition is maybe closer than the coaching staff thought, go ahead and give one guy a couple more reps kind of throughout the day. Give different groupings more reps. This is that time to do that, to get that experimenting, done in there, to see how guys react. Because the offensive line, too, is so much about continuity and trusting the guy next to you. Even Jermaine, noted that when he was talking about it to all of us as well. So get some work with Thayer and Greg Van Roten and all those guys there together. See how they communicate. See if one does it better than the other. Mix it up to where you've got Jermaine going with Greg Van Roten right in there. And then Alex Barr's in the mix. I mean, I've seen them cycle through a lot of different guys. But definitely arrow up for Thayer Munford for sure, which is huge for a guy coming into his second year out of the 7th round. I mean, that's been really cool to see.
And the reality is, Jesse, you know this as well as I do, right? You can't go 5 deep at offensive line. You got to go 6, 7, 8 deep. You got to feel good about whether it's Thayer Munford, whether it's Brandon Parker. We talked about Greg Van Roten. You have to feel good about really top to bottom in that room because we've seen it and we see it year after year after year. there's going to be a moment, whether it's Thayer or Jermaine or Greg or Brandon, you're going to say, hey, we need you to do something that isn't necessarily your job, but we got to get from A to Z. And there has to be some kind of base level of comprehension and comfort with the rest of those big fellas up front.
Well, one thing in particular, just kind of to that note, I think this offensive line, like I remember last year it was like, oh, well, who the heck's going to start? Yeah. There's not a lot of guys behind them. Like now all of a sudden the Raiders have some great depth along the offensive line.
Isn't it funny how that narrative changed in 12 months?
It really has. I mean, I guess that's what happens when you go and lead the league in rushing, right? It was kind of a big old like ball don't lie from the offensive line. Shout out to them for getting that done, and also Josh Jacobs as well. But I think just as a whole, you look at this offensive line, like no matter who wins the job or doesn't, like there's going to be a really good football player that's not going to be a starter. Who knows how the final roster kind of shapes out and who they move on from, who they keep. But just looking at it on a surface level of who you think is going to make this roster, in no particular order, you've got Thayer Munford, you've got Herron, and you have Jermaine Illuminor, all that can play tackle. But then there's also the positional versatility where Herron can kind of be your swing tackle, jumping on either side. And then also Jermaine, who's been that swing tackle, but has also played at guard as well. So, like, again, versatility is that buzzword with the offensive line. They've got it, but now they have depth and versatility as well.
A guy didn't even bring up Brandon Parker, a guy who's coming off of injury and can do that swing tackle job as well. And we look at Dylan, and I feel like we're like, just going around and around. But right, Dylan Parham, a guy with position versatility. If something were to happen to Andre, you probably feel pretty good about maybe not for 17 weeks, but for a week or two or a limited amount of time, saying, hey, hey, Dylan, go in there, be our big man in the middle, get us in and out of the calls, and say, hey, we can keep this thing afloat until Andre comes back. So we talked about the versatility, we talk about that depth, and that really is the name of the game for the big guys.
It 100% is, because it sucks, but just the nature of that position is a matter of not if, but when injuries happen. Guys are going to get banged up, and so you're going to need those guys to go in there and get the job done. And that's huge to be able to have that. And again, like you said, the guys that are not only have seasoned vets and whatnot, but also guys that are comfortable in this scheme. So many guys that enter this one in their second year, knowing things, knowing this offense. Any player we talk to, whether it's offense or defense, they all just talk about how much more comfortable they are in this system. And that is massive heading into the season.
I know we'll talk about the Niners a little bit later, but man, I cannot wait to see some of these big fellas. We're looking at the Jermaines, we're looking at the Brandon Parkers, really the Colt Millers too, who I think it's also a huge credit to him that you and I really haven't brought up Colton all that much since we started doing the show. He has looked really, really good throughout the entirety of camp, right? He is, locked and loaded, one of your premier left tackles in the NFL. He ain't going anywhere. And I think if you're a fan of this team, you got to feel pretty good that he's going to be protecting Jimmy G's blind side in just about a month here.
Yeah, I think the more that you don't hear us talk about Colton, the more excited you have to be because that means that man is just out there doing his thing. And honestly, even the times that I have watched him, again, he's just kind of that brick wall. You see the reps with him and Max, it's always a back and forth. It's not like, oh, Max is always dominating or, oh, Colton's always dominating. It's a nice back and forth, and that's what it should be out of your top dogs. And that's awesome for Colton. Awesome to be able to lock down the left side of that offensive line. So you have to love what you've seen out of him. And again, honestly, like I think as a whole, every guy along this offensive line, it's just looked so much better totality-wise than it has, last year or even years prior.
I think really for me, the word that keeps coming to mind is it just looks a little more cohesive, right? It looks a little more like, oh, this is how it's supposed to look, right? This is how it's supposed to feel. This is how it's supposed to sound. Like, yes, and I think the huge disclaimer of we'll get a much better idea of what these guys have come week one. But at least on paper, as we're checking things off the checklist in early August, this is how it's supposed to look. This is how it's supposed to feel. So.
Exactly. And that's the thing is, like we said, how crazy the narrative and how quickly it can change. Last year at this point, you couldn't say that.
No, 100. And let's not forget that really the first part of the regular season last year, too, there was so much rotation. There was so much, I don't want to say experimentation in the regular season, but there was a lot of, I think there was an element of like, let's still try to figure this out a little bit.
Yeah.
And it definitely feels like the Raiders are not doing that in 2023.
No, I think it was, did it take 5 weeks? I think it was to.
Yeah, it was either 4 or 5. Yeah.
To get it solidified. Like, that's something I don't think we're going to see this year. In the preseason, don't pay too much attention to the way the offensive lines are thrown out there because that's their time to experiment. I think come week one, I think they're going to know, hey, these are the 5 we want to roll with. And then I'd imagine, injuries aside, that's what's going to kind of be the standard moving forward.
Yeah, and again, and you and I have talked about this before, too, before we move on to the defense. But, we have that 5, but let's not forget about that Thayer Munford role from a year ago, right, where you're that big man jumbo set who's going to be the extra lineman. That's also a job that'll be up for grabs for the 2023 Raiders. But Jesse, shifting to the defensive side of things, over the past 2 days, the Raiders were inside yesterday, which was lovely.
Yeah,
they were outside today, which was lovely too, but perhaps not as lovely. The Raiders secondary, I think, has had a really, really fantastic 48 hours. When you look at what you've seen from the guys on the back end, and we'll ask Amik about that in just a second too, like what have been your major takeaways from that group?
Turnovers. They're creating turnovers. I believe it's 7 interceptions the last 2 days. One of those coming from Robert Spillane. So, we'll take him out of the secondary.
We can give him, we'll count it.
Yeah, hey, he caught it. It was a great play.
It.
So, I mean, dude might be making a case to get some looks on offense, kind of that like Mike Vrabel role from back in the day. But no, I've been really impressed with what we've seen out of the corners. Obviously competing, getting out there. One-on-ones, too, early on when they put the pads on, was it last Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Or this past Tuesday?
Yes. What are days?
Yeah, right. They all meld together. But it was more so advantage offense and throughout the whole way. Now the defense is caught up in one-on-ones. Again, that's a drill that's made for the offense to succeed. But the DBs, again, the competition level has kicked up. You can tell they're getting more comfortable going against these guys. Really impressed with them. And again, the biggest thing is like there are a lot of PBUs, but even more actually turning them into turnovers. That's been big. Today in particular, we noted Amik. He got his hands on one. Trayvon Merrick and Marcus Peters as well. So Peters is a guy that comes in over 30 turnovers forced in his career. He knows a thing or two about that. It already kind of looks like it's permeating through that group.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've really noticed over the past 2 days, and I think maybe a little bit early in camp as well, but really I feel like it's ratcheted up over the past 48 hours. It feels like the defense is being more vocal, right?
Yeah.
Not only in just the, hey, what do we need to do, but in that kind of post-play celebration, in the communication before and after the snap. It just feels like this is a group brimming with confidence. And to be fair, this is a group, when you and I sat here, about a month ago, and we're looking ahead to training camp, a group we had a lot of questions about. And to be fair, still a group that we have maybe not as many, but still questions about. But it really feels like this is a group that's hitting its stride as we're about a week and a half into camp. And I'm excited to see kind of how they build on this momentum going forward.
Yeah, me too. I mean, in particular, too, you have to be really happy with what you've seen out of the corners as a whole. But in particular, Marcus Peters, Jacorian Bennett, and Nate Hobbs, they're all kind of settling into roles here very quickly, and have all looked very good, very comfortable with each other as well.
Yeah, and also the president of the Jacorian Bennett fan club over here. Every time he does something, man, I just look over. I say, oh, boy, that's going in the Jesse Merrick notebook. But yeah, on a serious note, like I think he has been, I don't want to say a pleasant surprise, but it has felt like, oh, maybe he has a little more in the tank than we initially thought, maybe perhaps?
Yeah, I thought so as well. I mean, look, I figured the kid, I made the joke that, the tape that I watched was his game against Ohio State. Yeah. That was all I needed to see. But like the kid has brought it. He's always been up to the task. I think it was Josh that said, you can see on tape the guys that are out there, willing to get every rep. You can also see the guys that are hiding. Jacorian Bennett is not hiding from Devontae Adams one bit. He wants
we saw that today.
Exactly. He wants every single rep he can get against that guy. And you love to see that out of a young guy doing that. And so, he's taking advantage of that. Yesterday, we saw him come down with a pick inside. I believe it was in a either goal line or red zone, not system, period. There we go. Words are hard. But it was in a goal line period. He came down with it. So seeing a guy not only make a play, but also in an area that's very critical, massive from him. And you could see it when they were in shorts and jerseys, run around. He looked real fluid and fast. He looks even more comfortable in pads, which I get it. As the days go on as a rookie, you're going to get more comfortable. But to see a guy throw the pads on and continue to improve each and every day, like that's massive at a kid like that.
We're going to have to at some point put an ask in for Jacorian as we do this show. And I would love to, I'll have to remind you to ask him, but I would love, lift the veil for a second, Jacorian Bennett. The first time you lined up against Devontae Adams, what exactly, what are you feeling in that rep? You know what I mean? I'm sure some of the shine of it, some of the, oh my gosh, what's going on here, loses its luster pretty quickly. But that first rep, when you look up and there's the future Hall of Famer, biggest dog on the yard, like I really wonder what you think as a guy who was in college 8 months ago.
Yeah, I'd imagine, because as I said in episode whatever it was, I was like, the corners have to be like the craziest ones on your team. I'd imagine he's probably like, all right, let's go, strap it up, like me and the biggest dog on the other side, let's do this, So, and I'm sure there were a little bit of nerves, maybe more so leading up to practice, but in that moment, I'm sure he just goes into like kill or be killed mode. And obviously Devontae got the better of him in that first rep.
Sure.
Who wouldn't he get that against? But having said that, again, like we talked about with Michael Mayer, just the response out of those kids has been impressive.
And speaking of big dogs on the yard, speaking of guys that have no shortage of courage and are lacking fear in the best possible way, we just caught up with our guy, Amik Robertson. Big shout out to our PR staff, too, for getting creative along with the scheduling today. But, man, it was so good to catch up with Big Meek. We hit a, really in a pretty brief interview, we hit him on a lot of things, and it's always so good to catch up with him. So I hope that you guys enjoy our conversation as much as we did. Here it is, our chat with Amik Robertson.
SiriusXM gets you into every Raiders preseason game. Learn all about the team, plus hear your music, talk, comedy, and more. Subscribe now and get your first 3 months free. Get ready for some Raiders football.
And we're very excited to welcome in our guy, Amik Robertson, on a busy, busy day here in training camp. And Amik, let's just start here. Action on the field today. You get your hands on one football. You said it should have been two, but just what's the importance of kind of getting some of those big momentum plays during training camp?
That's something I kind of pride myself into. Always trying to get my hands on the ball each and every day. Even helping the younger guys. Helping them. Slow the game down, whatever. So each and every day, I just tell us as a group, man, attack the day and let's try to get our hands on the ball because like I said, PBUs don't get our name in the book, man. Getting our hands on the football do. So, we just try to get our hands on the football each and every day.
Yeah, I mean, and how much has that kind of been, the standard you guys are trying to push here of no more PPUs, but really getting turnovers and making big things happen?
We kind of emphasize each and every day PG. Our captain, Josh McDaniel, Coach Josh McDaniel tell us, every time try to get our hands on the ball, because that's kind of our goal. We didn't really get a lot last year, but we looking forward to changing that this year. So each and every day we kind of working on little things to get our hands on it.
One of those guys who just came in, new addition to the secondary room, Marcus Peters, a guy who's made himself a lot of money in this league by doing just that, taking away the football. I mean, now that we're, what about a week and a half into Marcus being here?
Was day 9, right? Yeah.
I mean, what's kind of the early impressions of him being in that room with
He's a very poised vet, man. I called him today. He was out there, when the corners was rolling in, I'm like, oh, vet. He was like, what you call me? I said, vet, man. Hey, that's because it's crazy. He caught an interception a couple days ago, and I got that same play today, and that's the one I dropped. I'm like, I remember Peters getting this same play, and we was in the same coverage, and he drove it, and so I wanted to do the same thing, but today I dropped it. So just having a guy like that in the room, man, to show you the X's and O's. Like I said before, helping the game slow down, man, he a great asset to the team.
Well, on top of that, too, just the attitude that he brings to you guys' group. I mean, that's got to be something you guys can get behind, right?
Yeah, he been savvy, man.
Yeah.
He been savvy. You like guys like that. He been chilling so far, but we know what kind of player he could be.
Yeah, 100%. He's done it in this league for a long time too. I mean, he's got the track record to back it all up. But Amik, we go through the training camp, right? And there's so many variables that coach throws at you, right? Today being one of the crowd noise, and I'm just wondering from a defensive point of view for the secondary in general, having to go through that communication. We got the Space Jam soundtrack rolling in. I mean, just how important is it for you guys to kind of get those reps now when we're not worrying about it's the Chiefs, the Broncos, it's whoever it is.
Very. We struggled yesterday. Well, it happens. That's what training camp for. We struggled yesterday, kind of communicating. But we always try to take it one step at a time. It's new guys that we added to the team. So we have to have that communication. And yesterday, we were there with it, but we wasn't on point with it. So today, we emphasized it today. And I think, we did a great job communicating overall. And Josh McDaniel does a great job with the noise because, of course, SI is going to be in the game.
Yeah, it's definitely shown for sure. And just for you, too, I mean, how much more comfortable do you feel in this system?
I feel very, very comfortable now. I know corner, I know nickel, or what they call it star. Yeah. So, anytime they need me to do this or do that, hey, man, whatever y'all need me to do, to help the team and also, put myself in a position to make plays, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going into my second year learning this defense. So I feel like, I know it like the back of my hand. Of course, there's a lot of stuff we got to tweak, to anticipate plays, but that's going to come.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of plays today. We're hoping we see a lot more plays throughout training camp and then ultimately the regular season. Well, hey, man, I want to make sure that you get out of here on time. You got a meeting in a couple minutes.
Yes.
I don't want Coach mad at me. Appreciate you hanging out with us, man. Best of luck, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, brother?
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Fans, you can upgrade your event experience to the best seats in the house with our premium seating options. Now is your chance to enjoy an unforgettable time with family and friends in our state-of-the-art suite and loge seats. Limited inventory is available for all upcoming events. So be sure to visit Raiders.com/suites today to learn more about our premium seating offerings.
And a big shout out to Amik for coming to hang out with us. And again, a big shout out to our PR staff for getting creative and flexible with the schedule, which we always very much appreciate. But Jesse, so the team is back on the field tomorrow, right? So they were working on a Sunday, would get us back in the rhythm of having a busy Sunday again. But then they're going to have a little time off and get ready for the Niners who are coming in at the end of next week. Before we look ahead to the Niners, I know that's what everyone wants to talk about. Let's talk about the Niners, the joint practices. We did this last week, and I thought it was a good exercise for us. Guys that have just stood out to you over this last portion of time. Who are the guys that you think have had nice back-to-back days of work?
Yeah, I think back-to-back days, but also just a good camp overall. Zamir White, Josh McDaniels talked about you throw the pads on, you're really going to get to see this kid do his thing. Specifically today, they didn't run the ball a ton yesterday, so I'm kind of cheating here on this one, but I would say good 24 hours or so for Zamir. Jeez.
We have a Zamir, an Amir, an Amik. Like, dude, I get
smoke coming out of my ears as I try and work my way through that. But Zamir, just running downhill, gets the ball right through the hole, flying in there, running behind his pads. You love to see that out of this kid, coming into his second year, really taking on much more carries as we try and wait and see what happens with Josh Jacobs. But been very impressed with him, not only as a runner, but also a pass catcher. That's something he's been working on as well. So liked what I saw out of him, and also in particular, the interior of the offensive line. And we all know the guys that have been there. We talked about it a bit there, but they've had a really good push in terms of opening those holes for all the running backs as a whole. Really, there's been a lot of room for them to run the last couple of days, even though the defense has had a nice couple of days. But also looked really good in pass coverage or pass protection as well. I really today only saw Max get through once on the inside, and it was off of a stunt. So really impressed what I've seen from those guys, because we know the whole thing is they can run block, but can they pass protect? They've shown that they can do that. So really impressed with them. Sticking with the offense, maybe you can hit on some more defensive
guys. And I love when this works out, when we don't plan it, but it is perfection. I'm two defensive guys that I've had my eye on. One, Marcus Epps. Yeah. Marcus Epps, I think, has really started to find his groove, find his footing on the back end of this Raiders defense. Active around the football, which he really has been throughout the duration of camp, I should say. But it feels like there has just been another level to him over the past couple of days. And another guy diving deep into the bag, Isaiah Polamau, right? Had a pick yesterday, and it just feels like he's another guy that says, hey, don't forget about me quite yet. Like, I might have something to say about this 53 when all is said and done. But, you and I have talked about it a lot. The secondary, I think, has just overall, the past 48 hours, the past two practices, has looked incredible. Really, really good. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but I think those two guys are two that have really stood out to me.
Yeah, no, they definitely have. And just in terms of Isaiah as a whole, he's that height, weight, speed type of guy. He's
looks
got
the part,
measurables.
100%.
Definitely does. And so to see him now start making those plays, being in the right positions, we talk about all these guys that are more comfortable in this system. He looks like a guy that's really kind of coming into his own as well. So I've loved what I've seen from him. Marcus Epps, I mean, that guy, you look for the ball, he always seems to kind of be around it. It's only a matter of time till I think he starts racking up more PBUs, some turnovers possibly coming in there as well into the mix. Also got to give a shout out to Trayvon Merrick as well. Last couple of days. I mean, he got in, I believe, nearly had an interception yesterday, got one today as well. Even in the kickoff return or kickoff period, I believe he was working on the scout team, so it was kickoff return. He got in there and forced a little strip as well on one of the guys. So, again, him kind of taking that next step in terms of forcing turnovers as well. I think that's the one thing that people want to start seeing more out of his game. He was that ball hawk in college. Got to see it now in the pros. And thus far, the last couple of days look pretty good there.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about a bunch, right? Big year for him.
Yeah.
Big year for Trayvon. Just in terms of the narrative surrounding him, just in terms of, we talk about the potential, all the potential in the world, and he's shown kind of glimpses of it in bits and pieces. Like, okay, could we do it now on a consistent level for 17 weeks? But one thing on our friend Isaiah, you and I noticed yesterday, no gloves.
Yeah.
No gloves, just the taped up fingers.
Old school.
Yes, love it, 100%. Very, very cool. And hey, if it's working, Don't change it, big fella. Do your thing.
That's a really cool look. Total.
Oh, dude, it's such a good. Oh, it's such a good look.
Just looks like a throwback Raider. You love to see that. And then again, to come down with the pick, I want to see him do it in the game now too with those taped up fingers. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, very, very cool. And we talk about guys that are getting more comfortable, right? We look at Isaiah in 2022, 11 appearances for the Silver and Black.
Yeah.
Had the one sack and how many interceptions? No picks, but had a few really nice pass breakups. But it seems like a guy who we haven't talked a ton about over the past, let's call it 6 or so weeks, as we really started looking ahead to training camp. But you talked about it, height, weight, speed, check. A guy who looks the part of an NFL DB, check times 1,000. So now can you put it all together? Can you take all the God-given ability you have, the talent, the physical stature, and go out there and make plays not only once in a while, but do it consistently?
Yeah, when we heard Amik talk about in terms of him, the versatility, star, nickel, a little bit of safety here and there, all those different things, I think Isaiah's another guy that has that frame to where you really can kind of line him up all over the place on the back end of the defense there. And you're also not worried about putting him, kind of near the box and having to make a tackle. So I just love the versatility that he brings to the table with the frame, but also seeing the comfortability as well. So he's going to be a guy that I'm going to have my eye on once the preseason games start.
And just real quick, a 6'4", 210-pound, 24-year-old kid who played at USC sounds like someone who belongs in the NFL. Or if you're drawn up, playing Madden or whatever, and you're drawing up what a DB looks like and feels like, it's very much that.
And that's one of the things I love about training camp too, is you see these guys kind of start to emerge. We talk about the guys going into their second year, all these different things that kind of pop a bit, and he has been one that's been a nice little pleasant surprise to kind of pop up out there.
Yeah, and look, there's 53 guys that make a team.
Yeah.
There's 53 guys that are going to contribute, and so we took. You and I are guilty of it too. You put so much stock in those first 22, right?
Yeah.
The 11 starters on each side. And you may be on offense, who are the 2 or 3 extra receivers and the running back? We put so much stock on those guys that we forget that there is going to be a moment, whether it's Isaiah Polamau, whether it's Greg Van Roten, whether it's Brandon Parker or someone else, or Roderick Teamer, someone that we aren't talking about a ton, that is going to make a meaningful play for the Las Vegas Raiders in 2023.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned Teamer. He was another guy you could talk to me about today.
That's right, my guy.
Yeah, he's been impressive as well, kind of flying around there. So there's so many guys, again, we talk about specifically on the defensive side of the ball that really popped the last couple of days. As a fan of Raider Nation, given what the defense has been over the years, you have to kind of love seeing those guys kind of come together, start create some turnovers and things like that. And look, it is just practice. It is early, but to see them start to put the foundation of what this could be for this defense is huge.
And real quick, because I do want to talk about the Niners in just a sec, but when you and I were talking on the field, and then you brought it up again, I just want to hit on this. There's, you go on social media today, right, and yesterday as well, and the offense looks this, and it looks like that, and what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And you brought up a really good point about what kind of your 2 cents on could be on perhaps the offense not having its best day by any stretch of the offense, but kind of a reason behind that.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to hear a lot of stuff out there like don't drink too much of the bad Kool-Aid about the offense. The sky isn't falling. I think if you look back to yesterday when they were inside, they were in shells. They didn't run the ball at all. So the defense didn't have to worry about a running game to kind of try and attack. They could sit back in coverage and kind of make their reads, and they did it in a great job there as well. Then you go and look at today. They do run the ball more, but I think the script, to me, it just seemed like, both sides of the ball, they share the script throughout the day. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing the staffs kind of say, hey, this is what we're going to call right here. On the defensive side of the ball, this is what we're going to call. The coaching staff knows. The players don't know until they get out there and start going through their reads. And to me, it just looked like the plan on defense was to take Jimmy's first read away and see what he does. Mm-hmm. And because there was a lot of kind of holding on to the ball, patting back there. And I don't mean that as a knock. I just mean that they wanted to see him kind of go through their progressions. And that's a long time and makes it easier for your guys in coverage to kind of sit back and do their thing. So I think don't read too much into what you hear. From my point of view, and again, I could be off base on this one, but just my take is that the script was to kind of take Jimmy's first read away, make him go through his progressions and hit other guys. Because there have been some balls that have been thrown a little late. They're letting the play go a little bit longer. So to me, that just screams there's a little more at foot here. It's not just, the offense is struggling.
Yeah, and the reality of this, too, is that coaching staff, to your point, want to put certain players, certain position groups in certain scenarios, right? This is the time where you can get weird, where you can get funky, where you can be as specific as you need to be in recreating whatever you want to see on that football field. So are there going to be moments where the defense is put in a position to succeed? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there going to be moments, are there going to be periods, are there going to be portions of a practice where it says, hey, the offense, let's let them cook. Let's really kind of see how this defense responds with kind of their heels on the grass there. Yes, that is also true. So to your point, don't drink the Kool-Aid, whether it's good Kool-Aid or bad Kool-Aid, all too much during this time of the year. I think all we want to see is number one, everyone out there stays healthy.
Yes.
But number two, that this team is getting in good work day after day, rep after rep, practice after practice.
And that's the thing you said. It's all about putting these guys in uncomfortable positions and seeing what they do. When my receiver coaches used to always say a little bit of heat and pressure turns an ugly piece of coal into a beautiful diamond, and that's kind of the process they're going through right here, right now. So I like the way that from afar, the script has looked like thus far for the offense, for the defense, you name it. And I think this was a question that I posed to Raiders fans in general was, okay, at this point in camp, and just given what this team has been over recent years, looking at the roster kind of in that bird's eye view, would you rather have the defense be further along or the offense? And I think if you look at it and kind of what this team has been over the last couple of years, you'd be fired up to see the defense maybe being ahead a bit here, because that speaks well. Because, look, we know the dogs that are on the offensive side of the ball. Those guys are going to be just fine when everyone's in the building. So I think this is something where, again, don't drink the Kool-Aid, too good or bad, but I think this is exactly where this team should be right now, and it's a good sign for the defense, not as much of like an indictment on the offense.
Bingo. If we didn't see Davante Adams until week 1, I have a feeling he would be okay.
Exactly.
I have a pretty sinking suspicion things would work out for him. But let's look ahead for the next couple of days, Jesse. As I said, the Raiders are back on the practice field tomorrow. They will enjoy a little time off after that. And yes, it is finally time. Joint practices are almost. We are so close. They're almost upon us. We hear all the time, we've heard it from general managers, from coaches, from the players themselves, the value, the deep inherent value for a football team to have joint practices. Some say even more valuable than the preseason.
Yeah.
The Niners are coming to town. Take out the rivalry, take out all that kind of stuff. What do you need to see from the silver and black during those 2 days of joint work?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is the competition level, obviously, because that's going to get kicked up a notch. And I think this is where we're really going to get a chance to see what Jimmy G can do, because I personally don't believe we're going to see Jimmy out there in a preseason game this year. So I think his preseason games are going to be these joint practices. So for me, I want to see the guy that we saw early on in camp that looked clean, crisp, going through his reads, really delivering the ball precisely to his guys and making fast decisions. So that's the biggest thing I'm going to be looking for. But also on the flip side, we've seen the DBs really kind of pick it up a bit here the last couple of days. I want to see them do it against the weapons that the 49ers have.
Yeah, and I think for me, kind of sticking on the defensive side of the football, yes, we want to see all these things from Jimmy.
Yeah.
We want to see kind of how he responds, and we talk about being in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
I kind of want to do a status update on Max Crosby, right? Max has been a machine through the first 9 days of training camp.
Yeah.
Now he's going to go against someone that isn't wearing a silver or black jersey.
Yeah.
Where is he, right? And you and I are both of the agreement that he is one of the elite defensive ends in the NFL, really an elite defensive player, period. But I'm kind of curious to see how he stacks up against a Niners offensive line, who for a very good reason has gotten a lot of praise over the past couple of years. I want to see what number 98's got cooking.
Yeah, Trent Williams, one of the best tackles in the league. You know, he's getting an opportunity to get a lot of good reps against him. I guarantee you they're going to be lining up on that side. Both the coaching staffs are going to be talking and saying, hey, we want good on good in this situation. So I would imagine we're going to see a lot of that, and that is going to be very intriguing.
Yes.
I already can't take my eyes off of the guy when we're out there. I've always got to be like, no, watch the other guys on the defensive line, but he's so entertaining to watch. So I think in that first practice against the 49ers, definitely going to be watching Max on that side of the ball and how much he can affect the quarterback.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't mean a ton in the grand scheme of the season, but I want to see how the Raiders kind of set a tone that early on in that first practice, right? The Niners are coming to our house, right? The team is not going to Santa Clara. The Raiders are welcoming in the Niners. How do they set the tone? Say, hey, we're going to be good house, we're going to be good hosts, but like this is our house. Don't get it twisted. These are our field. This is our facility, and I'm kind of curious to see how that kind of manifests itself very early on in that kind of first 7-on-7 or 1-on-1 period.
Yeah, I'd imagine Davante, Jimmy, who we've heard talking some mess out there.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And then also on the defensive side of the ball, we know Max is going to get his in there. And then also Marcus Peters. I believe those are going to be the tone setters, and the rest of the team is going to kind of rally behind them, And so I know maybe take the rivalry out of it, but I think specifically for a guy like Marcus Peters as well, who grew up in the Bay, wants to really kind of show, hey, no, again, like you said, this is our house. And I think he comes in with that mindset.
And don't go to twisted, right? Marcus Peters lets people know, like, I'm from Oakland.
Yeah,
right?
He loves that.
And for the people like me who are with the team in Oakland, like, there is a very real, very passionate, are you from the East Bay or are you from the city, right? And typically, when you look at people, they're either a Raiders fan or they're a Niners fan, right? They're either a Giants fan, they're either an A's fan. You got a lot of common ground on the Warriors because they're the only team in town. But look, I think to your point, as a dude who grew up in the East Bay, Marcus Peters was a Raiders fan. He was not a 49er fan.
No, he definitely was not. And one little funny aside today when we were talking to him, he said throughout his whole career, he's played for all these other teams, and his dad has never worn his jersey because he's a Raiders fan. So he's like staying true to the brand, and he's like, finally, my dad can throw on one of my jerseys and represent me, represent my team, And so that's really cool. And I think that's something when you hear a guy like Marcus Peters say that, you can tell what it means to him to wear the silver and black. And that, to me, is just so cool.
100%. And we talk about guys who we probably won't see during the preseason. Yeah. I would be pretty surprised. We saw number 24 out there on Sunday night against the San Francisco 49ers. But we have so much to see, so much to discuss before Sunday night. Like I said, we'll be back in the practice field tomorrow. Then we'll get a little well-deserved break to kind of reset the mechanism and get ready for a very busy, very exciting, very passionate, very content-heavy week. And I cannot wait. So for Eddie Paskal, my guy Jesse Merrick, big shout out to Amik Robertson for coming through. And thank you to our entire staff behind the scenes today for making our little program go from A to Z. It is very much appreciated. Buckle up, Raider Nation. We are not done yet, and we will see you guys next time for our next episode of the Raiders Training Camp Podcast.